So there was a lot of you that enjoyed the car commercial that I shot together with my buddy Oscar, and it was a challenge. No, but like jokes aside, it was definitely a big challenge to not get all the reflections in the car and what kind of shots that we wanted to use in the video and how we should edit the video as well. And in this video, I thought I'd show you an editing breakdown of the entire video and show you how I made the footage look the way that it looks and what kind of effects that I used and how to get that like perfect sun flare that we had in some of the shots and how you can like fake vertigo shots and all those things. So I highly recommend you to go and get your favorite beverage of choice because this is going to be an in-depth breakdown of that entire sequence. So usually the first thing that I do with a cinematic sequence like this, maybe for the poker b-roll, the office b-roll, or this sequence, it doesn't really matter. I usually start cutting the sequence together as I want it before I add any sound effects. So I try to make sure that I have all the different like cuts and all the different shots that I want to have into one single timeline that feels good. And after that, I start fiddling around with the time of the clips that I'm using for the video. So the first shot when Oscar is walking up, we shot actually in 120 FPS. We probably didn't have to do that, but I wanted it to go a little bit slower than 30 FPS, but I didn't want it to be as slow as like 5 times slower than we actually shot it. So I decided to slow that down to 59% so that it feels like you have this slow introduction to the shot, to the location, and you have some time to look around what is going on in the frame. Then we have this shot, which is a creative choice where everything is blurred out. You can see that Oscar is holding in something, which is probably the key in this case. And then you can see that the car taillights is turning on, and then Oscar is entering the car, and then the car rolls up to the train track. But all of those clips in the beginning are slowed down to make it feel a little bit more like slow paced than what we are going to jump into when the car is coming. And there's basically nothing special added to these shots to make them look the way that it is. The only thing that I've done is the color grading. So looking at this shot, for example, you can see that without the color grading, it's gonna look like this, which is really like washed out. It doesn't look as good as I wanted it to be, and we wanted to have this moody color grading to it that would feel like really warm and really like intense sun and you know, really Breaking Bad style color grading almost. I usually start out with color grading in cinema grade and add that as my base color grade. And if you haven't seen my color grading video, you can check it out right here because I actually go through all the different things that I do to my videos to make them look like this. Opening the controls in cinema grade, you can see that the base correction is basically that I drag down the midtones all the way down, like -94, and then drag up the shadows. I increase the contrast a little bit, and then we adjust the yellows, blues, and reds. When you're done with that, you want to jump over to the final grading, and then you're going to do some adjustments here as well. And for this sequence, I didn't want to use a lot, mainly because I wanted to be able to control everything as I wanted it to be. And as you can see right now, we don't have this like warm tone, reddish tint to the footage, and that is where color finale comes in and gives us this like pop to the video that we don't have with cinema grade alone. And you could probably do this within Final Cut Pro as well, but I enjoy using cinema grade and color finale because of the ease of use and streamlining my own workflow. So looking at the settings that I have here is that I increased the temperature of the shot because it was shot at 6200 white balance, but I still wanted it to be more warm in the tone. So I increased that and dragged down the tint so that we had a little bit more red introduced. And then jumping into the edit layers, you can see that I only added a curves layer, which I lifted the shadows and adjusted the different curves with the mode Luma Preserving so that we get a little bit better look to the footage. And as you can see, looking at the before and after, it's more leaning towards the teal and orange look than what it was before. And this kind of look is something that I wanted to keep throughout the entire video. And the only thing that I did to the different shots is that I adjusted them individually depending on the exposure that we had for the different shots. This shot right here, where the revving meter is going up, is something that we probably could have filmed where Oscar would just pressing the gas and we would have these like rah, rah, rah. But we kind of thought that it would be fun to do it this way, because then we could fake both the speedometer, oops, battery on my mouse died, va? Oops. And the RPM. Do you say RPM? Gosh, I think you do. But yeah, this one right here. So the original shot looks like this, which is not something that we want to use in the video, because we have like the ABS, we have the anti-spin and stuff like that that we don't want to have when we have the rev meter going on the screen. So what we did is that we used a freeze frame before Oscar started the car, and then we added the original layer on top. And then what I did is that I added a draw mask to this, where I just pressed out the different control points and masked out this area so that it's not going to be visible in the shot that we have in the final video. Here we go. And then I decided to choose invert mask. And playing this back, it actually looks pretty good. And when I was done with that, I decided to do a compound clip by hitting Alt-G and creating like a merged clip that has those two clips in together. And then I decided to color grade it, of course, but to get the effect of that the car is shaking, what I did is that I added a handheld effect that you can find built into Final Cut Pro. And basically what I did is that I keyframed the shakiness, and then I increase the distance a little bit, and then as the rev meter is going down, I reduce the shakiness to like 40. And as you can see, it actually gives us this neat effect that we actually shot it while the car was driving. When it comes to the drone clips, it's mostly sped up a whole lot, and we made it like look like it was going way faster than it actually was. And having both clips side by side, it's gonna be really obvious that it looks like it's going way faster when you speed it up. So what I did is that I basically did a speed ramp to this, and the first part of the clip is going at 173% and then goes back to 142%. So we have a little bit of adjustment, and this is mainly because we want to time it with the music, and so that it's going to be perfectly aligned with all the different shots that we have. And I also applied the same kind of color grading to this clip as well to make sure that it matched the previous clips that we had, because the hardest part with this clip in particular was that it was really bright outside, even though the clock was like 7 p.m. and we weren't like getting that golden hour light that we wanted to have. But I tried my best to like recreate that with the grading, and then I also added a fake sun flare with M-Flare 2 that is such an awesome plugin to have. So it basically gives us this feeling that the sun is coming in from the right and Oscar is driving towards the sun. Another thing that I did is that I tried to track the car using the keyframes in the clips as well. I increased the scale and then adjusted the position of the clip. So you can see right here that we have this black area, but it moves towards the left as the car is driving. But increasing the scale to 150, it's gonna look like we actually got the shot as is from the drone itself. And since we shot all of this in 4K with the Mavic Air 2, we have the ability to like crop in and crop out and adjust the keyframes a little bit without losing too much resolution. This shot here of the front tire is also something that we shot using a gimbal with I'm not gonna say how it happened due to legal reasons, but we shot it and used the gimbal. It actually looked too smooth. Like, it didn't look like it was an intense feeling to the shot. And that is why I added a handheld effect to this shot as well. So having them both side by side, you're gonna see that there's a huge difference with the like handheld effect added in to the shot than if you don't have the handheld effect. It gives you this more intense feeling to it. And then we have this shot that we shot with the DJI Osmo Action, which is basically a hard cut just in between. We just did the same take 2 times, and then we did a hard cut in between so that it's not going to be visible when the car is moving so fast. But you can see right here that this is the cut. And what I did is that I also keyframed a little bit of handheld effect onto this so that it feels like it's going super fast. When it's driving over, it's giving us this like earthquake effect. And I also added in a fake sun flare on the left, as you can see right here, which brightened up the entire shot and make it look a little bit more like it's shot in golden hour than it was before. And as for this drone shot, we did a vertigo effect so that it feels like the car is driving super fast. And looking at it, you can also see that we added a sun flare up on the left, which is again M Flare 2 that I used for this. And the simplest way to do a vertigo shot is to basically keyframe both the scale and the position of the clip. So I started out at having the clip at 150%, and then during the entire length of the clip, I moved it back to 118% and then adjusted the position of the clip accordingly so that it would feel like the car was going super fast, and that gave us this like vertigo feel into it. So, which is pretty cool. And jumping on to the next clip, it's really important that you have like the direction of the car going the same way as the previous clip before, because otherwise it's going to be really hard and jarring to watch, because you're not going to be able to have that kind of flow that you want to have. And as for this clip, I want to have a little bit of that like Peter B-roll sequence added into the whole sequence, and I think that this turned out really good. I wasn't actually expecting it to look this good when I shot it, and to be able to get the effect like when he's driving away right here, I also added in the handheld effect so that it feels like the camera is shaking when he's like accelerating away. And this shot is probably the one that I'm most proud of because it looks so professional. It could be like straight out of a Hollywood movie. And it's also shot with the gimbal, and we also keyframed this a whole lot. And the reason that I wanted to keyframe the scale of this clip was because I wanted to have the feeling that the car was driving back and forth like this towards us and then back again, and then all of a sudden like whoa, going away. So what I did was that I basically played around with the scale of the clip, moving it back and forth, trying to see what fit and, you know, what would fit with the music, with the sounds, and how it would feel for the entire sequence. And as he's driving away here at the end, I also decided to like zoom everything out so that it feels like he's going super fast. And that is also where I increased the handheld effect with keyframes to make sure that it like feels like it's shaking when he's pressing the throttle. But I also wanted to keep the handheld effect during the entirety of the shot to make it feel a little bit more intense as well. And this shot on the bridge, what we did here is that we wanted to have the same direction of the car. So instead of like making it look like he's driving the opposite way around, which is the original shot, we just used the effect that is called flipped in Final Cut Pro. And then we keyframed the position of the clip so that we are tracking him in real time, and it feels like the camera is going a little bit with the car. Gives us this feeling that he's going really fast, but it's also like a chopper more than a drone. And even though we had like a really good sun flare on this shot, I decided to add in another sun flare to make it look even better for the final edits. And as you can see right here, there's this like aberration coming from the sun that looked really good during the entire shot. Feels so much more alive when you have that. As for the last two clips, it's basically just shot in 4K. This is like normal speed, and then this shot just slowed down, shot in 4K 30, Oscar exiting the car, and that is it. And when it comes to the sound design of this video, it is one painstaking process because there's a lot of things that is going on with the sound. But one of the most important things with the sound was that we were going to use the original sound from the actual Challenger. So what I did to pick that sound up was that I had the microphone, the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus, attached to my behind the scenes camera almost all the time when we were shooting the entire sequence. So then I could just like go in and pick up the different sounds that the camera did record during the shooting process, because we did like a bunch of takes on everything, you know, when we're driving back and forth, the pass-bys and all that. And that is something that I could pick up from the microphone when I was jumping into the editing process. But we also had to add in a bunch of different sound effects as well, such as the ambient sounds, the wind whooshes when the drone is flying, and the chopper noise that we found on artlist.io. And usually what I do when I start the sound designing process of something like this is that I start with the ambient sound, and then I work my way up from that, like into the smallest details to finalize the entire process. And for example, in the slow-mo shot when the car is passing by, what we added was like a super like subtle sound of metal expanding when the car is passing by. So if you only look at the shot with that sound added, it's gonna look like this, which is pretty cool. So like, I'm trying to layer the sounds and make it match with the music and with the sequence that I've edited together to make it a like unit instead of trying to just add the sounds just because I want to add the sounds. And even though I would love to take you through the entire process of doing the sound design on this, that is going to be simply impossible because there's so many painstaking hours trying to like fiddle around, finding the right sounds, editing this and doing that. But I will show you the entire timeline of the sound design so that you might be getting some inspiration for your own videos that you can use. So I really hope that you enjoyed this editing breakdown, and if you did, I would love to hear it in the comments down below. And if you liked the video, do give it a thumbs up because that is highly appreciated. And if you haven't subscribed, that would be awesome as well, because I would love to see you in the next video. Peter from Sweden saying goodbye.